heavy foundation, cut crease eyeshadow, Kylie lip kits, contoured features, and highlighters so bright that it could blind you. Throughout the 2010s, the world was obsessed with embracing a look far from human.
Ironically enough, beauty standards sought to reach an image that even those promoting it could not obtain themselves. In fact, many celebrities began to resort to plastic surgeries and other unnatural methods to reach these perfect looks.
However, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the ideals fueling our understanding of beauty collapsed, and as the globe became centered around concepts of health and cleanliness, beauty standards shifted to embrace natural features and self-care, with trends popularizing light makeup, oils to promote hair growth, and even herbs to improve skin glow.
So, welcome to the Girly Method. I'm Zanara Lopez.
And I'm Rachel Chavez.
And in today's episode, we'll be discussing the reinvented beauty ideals of our time that came about from the COVID-19 lockdown.
We'll also compare these standards to those idolized in the early 21st century and review how these new standards are affecting our society today. So before we dive into how the beauty industry was influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic, I want to set the scene of how it was in the early 21st century before we saw this worldwide shift. Okay, so it was the age of social media. Social media was on the rise. We saw people becoming more connected than ever. Trends were spreading. Magazines were also spreading, and brands. This is what we call globalization. Like, we were seeing Western trends become more spread out than ever before. Whereas before, it was more, each country was
doing their own thing.
Was like isolationist. Yeah. They were doing their own thing, creating their own standards, instead of adhering to what they had traditionally done. Like, before, we saw a lot of Eastern countries, they would like more plump features, more feminine, soft, like they would like round faces because it was a sign of wealth. Like, I saw in an article that it mentioned that in Eastern countries, like in Korea, for women to have a fuller face, it was a sign that they were taken care of and they could have like a family provide for them since they didn't work.
So they had been adhering to those standards that you had said, but because of
globalization,
the rise of social media, people were starting to incorporate like more masculine features, like the defined jawline, the high cheekbones, the lifted eyebrows, and the fox-like eyes. They were like trying to manufacture a very artificial look rather than embracing these natural features that you were talking about. During that time, we also saw a lot of influencers promote techniques that altered facial definition and structure to achieve those qualities that were being promoted all over the world. And it oftentimes, made people feel like they had to compensate for the features that they believed they were lacking. So that also pushed them to like start using a lot of makeup, and like, for example, excessive foundation and concealer, overlined lips, very block-like eyebrows, and Botox. They were using these invasive procedures to achieve a look that was, like we had said before, it was very far from human. I feel like that people were also felt like they were they had to wear like these very extreme looks out in public for everyday activities.
We would see people at the grocery store wearing like a full face of makeup, which would like take a lot of their time, but they just felt the need to do it because everyone else was doing it.
It was like a bandwagon effect.
Yeah, and those that did not participate in it or didn't jump on the bandwagon, they just felt like outcast or like they weren't doing enough like everyone else. But it's just that society had set such a high standard that when you were just doing what you had to do, it felt like you weren't doing enough.
Yeah. And because we were so focused on achieving this look with all of this makeup, I feel like there was such a large disregard for skincare because people were so focused on just achieving that look. They just didn't really think about how all of that makeup could be affecting their skin. Well, not only that, but we also saw a lot more individuals using very harsh products on their face.
Like the harsh makeup wipes to rub off all the makeup, which would cause like tears in the skin, and would just leave a lot of like makeup still on the skin, which would like clog the pores.
And even after big events, people, they still wouldn't take care of their skin because they were just focused on the makeup aspect. And it even like led to some people, accidentally falling asleep with their makeup. You would see
Yeah.
their face on the pillow in the morning.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
the eyelashes and everything. So I feel like a lot of this just goes back to the influence of social media and digital creators taking advantage of their platform and how they weren't in person, because we saw a lot of creators start using filters and Facetune, Photoshop, all these things to alter their appearance, which set an unrealistic standard that the average person couldn't reach because the person that was promoting it couldn't reach it themselves. And also the way that lighting is set up, the angles, like all these things influence how a person looks in an image, and you can't gauge the realistic appearance of a person just based off how they look in an image, because they can just manipulate all these aspects. So in reality, people were just becoming really insecure, and they were setting themselves up for an ideal that simply didn't exist.
But anyway, moving on. A few years later, I think everyone found themselves at a very they found themselves in very dire times because the world was experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, which definitely made some drastic changes to the beauty industry. So, like for example, when the US government enforced the lockdown and they implemented the law on like the masks use, people started using makeup less because the mask it would cover almost their entire face, and there was no need to uphold those same beauty standards. I know for me, when the masks were mandatory, I just focused on like my eye looks. I didn't really do anything to my face. I'm sure you have a similar experience, right?
Yeah, for me, when I was wearing the mask, for some reason, like my skin had a very harsh reaction to the fabric that it was made out of. I'm sure
Same.
that it had like some chemicals on it, and it was just
Yeah.
very hard and stiff. So I would like break out like in my entire like chin to cheek zone. So I just didn't put any products on my skin because that would be like killing it. It was already
Yeah.
like struggling with the mask, so to just like stack on more products, it would just be horrible.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people, went through the same thing as us. And yeah, again, because nobody was using makeup, the beauty industry experienced some declines in sales, right? Here we found that in an article it explained that lipstick sales went down by 40% in 2019, and even weekly makeup use decreased by 31% in comparison to 5 years before. So it was definitely very hard to like continue upholding the standards that the early 2010s had been upholding. And not only that, but because of COVID times, there were a lot of measures placed in stores, like the 6 feet apart rule. Not only that, but they also took off the makeup testers because COVID spreads by, it's an airborne illness. So it spreads by, I guess, respiratory droplets. And when, I guess, people touch that or put it on their skin, it can transfer to that object and then people can get sick like that.
And also, like, we need to keep in mind that since it was such a dangerous time to just be going around, like, a lot of people just didn't go out for anything that was unnecessary. So they will only go out for the essentials, like maybe getting groceries or getting some errands done. So a lot of people just took on to like online shopping, and they preferred that method since it was like a lot safer.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we already know, like shade matching, like your foundation, your like concealer and stuff, it's already hard enough like in person because you have to get the lighting right, the tones and everything like that. So a lot of people just didn't want to go through that when they were online shopping, so they just stopped buying as much makeup as before.
Yeah, not only that, but because people, were forced to stay in their homes, there was this mass isolation. So again, people were just by themselves at home or with their family. And humans are very sociable creatures. They like talking, they like going out. So when the lockdown occurred, a lot of people resorted to social media as a way to stay connected with their friends and with other people. It was just a way to make things still feel a little bit normal. But at the same time, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was such new focus on, like, I guess, staying healthy, improving immunity, and just keeping clean. And it drove a lot of individuals to, begin incorporating these concepts into their beauty routines, leading to like a focus on skincare and more natural makeup styles.
Yeah, like we saw a lot more people sharing their beauty routines, and even we saw like different professionals maybe sharing like products that you could use. The content was coming more from the people. Like we were just seeing like a lot of like get ready with me's and just like
outfit of the days, right?
Yeah, like it was like content for the people, made by the people.
Yes, for sure. And I think that because people began sharing a lot of their own I guess hacks or like DIYs or ways to like do this or that.
So now we were seeing like a rise in the self-improvement movement. Like a lot of people they were like at their homes, they had this extra time on their hands, and instead of just like sulking or just becoming depressed like by the social isolation, a lot of people just decided to like take advantage of the time and just use it to improve themselves. So with these new tips, they were implementing it into their routines, and they were like starting like a new lifestyle that would like carry out throughout the years.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of, women reported in this article by the Washington Post that because of the pandemic, like you said, people were trying to improve. So a lot of women took the time to really evaluate their own relationships with beauty, and it helped them, refine their routine, and they figured out what they actually wanted to do with their beauty routines. It wasn't as before where they felt like they had to succumb to some standards. They were actually branching out to different places to see what was best for them. In fact, a woman here named Sarah Cox mentioned in the article said that when the pandemic started, obviously all these places were closing, she couldn't get certain procedures done, but afterward, like when she started like focusing on herself and doing her own thing, she said it felt very liberating. And actually, I think one factor that really contributed to people starting to really look inward and at their own beauty routine and what they wanted was the fact that a lot of specialists hopped online to talk about their, I guess, career, their field, and what they saw, like common problems that they saw and how you could fix it. They wanted to share their knowledge with the public, especially in that time that people couldn't see each other physically because of the pandemic. So they just hopped online and they just started, educating people about what they could do to improve themselves.
Yeah, according to an article from Euromonitor, it mentions like the influence of TikTok as a platform on like the human mindset on what they were expecting from their products. So we saw the rise of this trend of skinification. This is when people were expecting their products to not only be like perfecting their skin, but they also had to like have properties that made it healthier. So we saw like a hybrid type model becoming more trending, like different products that would be both beneficial for the skin and also make the makeup look good. Yeah. We also saw like this glowy look. They expected their products to rejuvenate the skin, boost immunity, and improve the microbiome of the skin. They also wanted like acne treatments, like embedded and everything like that. Like from this, we also see that like the rise of the clean girl look, which is like a very minimalist makeup look.
It really emphasizes embracing your natural features, right? Using the same products that you mentioned, like the tinted sunscreen, which not only does it help your skin and protects it from UV light, it also gives it like that really nice glow. And actually, this glow was something that was very a very important aspect in the new makeup styles that were arising, because for example, like this cosmetic surgeon named Alexandra Rifkin said in this article called Goodbye Instagram Phase, Natural Beauty is Back. When the pandemic began, people were so focused on health that they wanted to go back to trends that really focused on restoring their skin to like a more naturally healthy, youthful state. They wanted like rosy cheeks, clear and bright skin, and like even brightness under the eyes. So there were like new products coming out that helped you achieve that look. Like I mentioned the tinted sunscreen, but there were also some other ones.
Yeah, like we saw like some serum concealers which would hydrate your skin as it was on. We also saw like liquid and cream blushes, which would add to that natural and glowy look. Like sometimes they even had like little sparkles, so it would look extra glowy.
And the lip glosses too.
Yeah, we saw like the lip glosses, and more specifically lip oils, which was like a improved version of the lip gloss.
Yeah.
Which is because it is like a skincare
product
while also being like a makeup product all in one. It would hydrate your lips while it was on, and it would stay all day.
Yeah, it was like one of those ideal commodities that did both for your skin.
Yeah.
So in the end, we can really say that the COVID-19 pandemic had a drastic impact on beauty standards and the way that we define them. It was sort of like a mini renaissance, right?
Yeah, whereas before we were seeing people wanting to copy a certain look, just trying to recreate these features that were trending, like the high cheekbones, the lifted eyebrows, the cat eye look,
the very tight like tightened skin look.
Yeah, like the sculpted Botox look. Like now we were seeing people just embracing their own features that made them beautiful. Like they were creating their own standard of beauty, and they themselves were enough. Like they didn't have to make up for anything because they had discovered that they were beautiful in their own way.
Yeah, they didn't have to please what society deemed beautiful, right? They didn't have to fulfill those standards. But still, I feel like there's a lot of progress to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we still see these lasting impacts that the previous beauty standards left. Like even in the current generations, we still see it. For example, like one of the biggest things that has always been like a pressure on women living in a patriarchal society is the male gaze, and just how men have created this standard for women
to uphold.
Like they had to look a certain way, like
and act a certain way too at times.
Yeah, like we even see it in films, in media. We see it everywhere. How women just felt this pressure to adhere to this male created standard.
Yeah, so when the lockdown was lifted, we saw that women were very concerned about going back to the workforce and going back to their regular lives because they felt as if being natural was not enough. And even like in the same article by the Washington Post, it says that women pay greater financial penalties for not conforming to beauty standards, especially in the workplace, a cost that is often compounded for women of color and women who are members of other marginalized communities. So obviously, because of this male gaze and this standard that men had created for women, they just felt insecure about going back. They felt like they weren't enough. And I think that's something very concerning, something that the world needs to work on.
Yeah, like I felt for women, it created a cognitive dissonance of sorts.
Yeah.
Because from one side, they had just returned from like this self-improvement journey, and they had like a lot of like time to reflect on themselves and just like have some introspection and sort of just analyze their perception of their own beauty. But now that they were returning to the real world, I guess, and they were interacting with others, they still felt this pressure that they weren't enough.
Yeah, they felt like they had to conform back to the standards that had been popular before. But still, I feel like these new trends that are appearing, like the clean girl look and even like the coquette core and Barbie cores, all trends that have to focus on empowering women are still very important in the sense that they help women, I guess, break out of these standards, and it reminds them that they don't have to
conform to these
standards.
Like
conform, like
we've been saying,
they can be themselves. Yeah, and they don't have to feel insecure, or they don't have to feel like they need to please what men say is beautiful. They can find that for themselves and make themselves happy, which is super important. So, just to recap, the COVID-19 pandemic caused a worldwide shift, even affecting the world of beauty and the way that we see ourselves. It was like a reset for the world, which resulted in a very humanistic approach to beauty and makeup. Heavy makeup and even the sculpted look was no longer a need in the society because women were starting to find the beauty in themselves and embracing who they are.
Well, that's everything for today's episode of The Girly Method. Before we leave though, I would like our listeners to keep this information in mind whenever they feel they aren't enough or they aren't beautiful. Just because beauty standards are always changing, it doesn't mean that you have to keep bending yourself to fit into them.
Yeah, we hope this podcast serves as a reminder to honor your beauty and appreciate the intricacies that make you unique. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.